Madam Chair, you're at the top of the hour and you do have quorum, but I would give it another minute or two. I imagine more individuals will be joining.
Okay. Kelly, if it's okay with you, I'll go ahead and get started. Great. Okay. Well, good afternoon, members of the MAG Human Services Technical Committee. This meeting is now called to order. It is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube as a way for members of the public to participate. Please state your name when making a comment or asking a question, and I will ask that you keep your microphones on mute when you are not speaking. We will now begin the meeting with a roll call of all members.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Melanie Dykstra. Here. Thank you. Renee Ayers Benavides. Karen Bishop. Kathy Chang on behalf of Jacqueline Edwards. Here. Thank you. Seth Dyson.
Here.
Thank you. Autumn Grooms. Jerry Guajardo.
Here.
Thank you. Ileana Godinho.
Here.
Thank you. Susan Hallett.
Oh, sorry, here.
Thank you. Mary Lynn Kasanick.
Here.
Thank you. Rachel Sanders.
Here.
Thank you. Kristen Charlau. Chair, Ms. Christina Penatescu.
Here.
Thank you. Did I forget anyone? Madam Chair, you have quorum.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Our next item is a call to the audience. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. Members of the public could submit written comments via the MAG website 2 hours prior to the meeting. Kelly, do we have any written comments for this item?
Madam Chair, we do not have any written comments for this item or any other item on your agenda today.
Thank you. Moving right along, our next item is the approval of the June 8th, 2023 meeting minutes. Does any member of the committee have any questions or comments about the minutes? I did have one, and that is item 5, second to the last paragraph. It appears I miscommunicated what I intended to. It's not that my city has been directed to fill out a form, but that we have been directing residents who call us with complaints to use the form on the Department of Health Services website to log a complaint about any kind of group living quarters licensed for investigation. So if we could make that correction and with no other comments about the minutes, is there a motion to approve the minutes with that adjustment?
I'll make a motion to approve, Melanie with Gilbert.
Thank you. And a second?
A second from Susan with Phoenix.
Thank you. So this is new. In order to do the voting for approval of the minutes or whenever we're doing voting, we're going to have members take part in a voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio. And then if you cannot or do not want to turn on your camera, we'll do a roll call vote for the people who are are not able to utilize their cameras. So please do leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote. And so with that, can I have a voice vote from all of the members? Those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. And those
Aye.
opposed, thank you. And those opposed say nay. Okay. And so with a motion and a second, I believe the motion passes. Is that correct, Kelly?
Madam Chair, we have one member who is joining at the moment. I would ask
Okay.
you to pause for just a second to see if we can give her a chance to vote. Excuse me. That's Kristen Charlotte with Tempe.
Oh, great. Hi, Kristen. Do you approve a motion to accept the minutes with a minor change clarifying a comment I had made at the last meeting?
Kristen Charlotte, we're calling on you for that question. It's a vote, yes or no. Up to you. She may be having difficulties with her audio, Madam Chair. We'll have the minutes reflect that Kristen did not vote on that.
Okay, thank you. So next up, we have Dana Martinez, the Director of Domestic and Sexual Violence Services at A New Leaf. She's been with the organization for 27 years and has worked in both the homeless services and victim services continuums. Ms. Martinez's focus of her presentation will address the intersectionality of homelessness and domestic violence. She will also share information on the current strategies of the Coordinated Entry Committee to create a more streamlined process for survivors accessing coordinated entry. The Regional Domestic Violence Council has chosen to highlight individuals fleeing domestic violence who become homeless during October's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I think I was, is that correct? I think I was reading from the old agenda. Kelly, did I miss anything?
I don't believe so, Madam Chair. That's correct.
Okay, Dana, you have the floor.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's great to see you all. I'm happy to be here today to share with you some information about DV survivors and their experience with homelessness. Some of the discussion points we'll review today, we'll go over some definitions, survivor definitions, and then a definition of homelessness for survivors, that intersectionality of domestic violence and homelessness, talk a little bit about trauma and survivors' response to that, and then, as mentioned, I'll talk about what we're doing in the Coordinated Entry Committee to better integrate survivors' experience in as they access coordinated entry sites. So I'm just going to run through these quickly, but the domestic violence definition is a broad definition that relates to patterns of coercive control. That could be acts of threats. It could be threatened acts. It's a lot. Sorry, there's a lot of different types of abuse that can happen in a domestic violence relationship. And it's really the motivating factor is for that perpetrator to gain power and control over the individual. In the state of Arizona, that definition does include family members and roommates. And so we also use a term called interpersonal violence to really speak to those dynamics that are happening, same kind of thing, patterns of control, physical abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, but that happen within a intimate relationship, such as current or former partner, current or former spouse, intimate partner, person with whom they share a child in common. Excuse me. Because the dynamics can be different in those relationships versus a family or a roommate situation. We also talk about stalking, which refers to harassing and intimidating or threatening conduct that causes somebody to feel in fear of their safety or fear of a family member's safety. Sexual violence is, again, a broad term that really focuses on any type of sexual conduct that is unwanted. And it doesn't have to be contact. It can be non-contact as well, such as, sexual harassment, slurs, epithets, things that are, propositions that are unwanted, all the way to that contact. It could be, an attempted rape, a completed rape, an actual assault. And so we use the term sexual violence to kind of encompass all of those different types of unwanted sexual crimes. And then there's human trafficking, and this involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion for some type of labor or commercial sex act. A lot of times people think that this is mostly foreign nationals, but in the United States, human trafficking is the highest number of cases of human trafficking are from domestic citizens within the United States, and it can range all ages, all genders. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm using DV as a broad term to encompass all these types of gender-based violence. And the reason I'm doing that is for our next slide. So HUD has categorized homelessness into 4 different categories, and people experiencing all those different types of crimes we just talked about do all fall into category 4, which is an individual or family who is fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence. And again, that term domestic violence encompasses all of those other types of victimizations we've talked about. They also have to have no other residence and lack the resources and support networks to obtain additional permanent housing or other permanent housing. That is the key right there, permanent housing. Shelter is not considered permanent housing. If a person goes into shelter, a survivor goes into a shelter, they are technically considered homeless. Survivors do not like to consider themselves homeless. So a lot of times they won't say that. And so there's been a lot of disconnect between survivors going into a court and entry site where they're asking about their homelessness, and like, I'm not homeless. That's not me. I haven't been living on the street for a long time, or I haven't, met some of those other criteria of those other categories. And they're already feeling very shamed about the domestic violence that they're in. So then to also admit that they're homeless is a challenge that a lot of survivors, have in recognizing and don't want to recognize. So the thing that's important about this category 4 from HUD is that with this definition in place, survivors do not have to become literally homeless in order to obtain housing. Unfortunately, in a community like Maricopa County, where we are very large, there's just not enough housing to house everyone, right? And so we are working hard to better integrate this into our court and entry processes. So we do know that there's a lot of intersectionality between domestic violence and homelessness. A lot of survivors will choose to live on the street, live in their car, live somewhere else other than with their abusive partner, if that's the only choice that they have. I do want to mention that in Maricopa County, we're a county of 4 million people, there are less than 500 domestic violence shelter beds available. So that is a very tiny percentage of beds available to a large community with a lot of people. And when the statistics are that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 7 men experience domestic violence at some point in their lifetime, that's a lot of people in 4 million, in a county of 4 million, the size of 4 million. So just to help provide that context of why people may choose to go become homeless rather than going into shelter. A lot of times shelter is just not available. It just isn't. We do need more domestic violence shelters. In a study of homeless women in New York, they found that 80% of them had become homeless due to their domestic violence. And other studies show that as much as 57% of all homeless women report domestic violence as their immediate cause of homelessness. So there's a lot of barriers to accessing resources. As I talked about those power and control dynamics in that abusive relationship. A lot of times their abusive partner has purposely done things to ruin their ability to get out and get safe. They ruined their credit history. They ruined their rental histories. They've gotten them fired from multiple jobs for continuing to harass them at their job or other things. There's been a lot of housing discrimination. There are what's called crime-free communities that if you call the police, you might get evicted from your apartment or the house that you're renting, depending on what you're living in. And while there are supposed to be laws that cover domestic violence in that. Again, not all calls are for domestic violence, even though that's the reason that somebody may have called. They don't get counted as domestic violence. And then, loss of subsidized or other housing. If somebody is in like a Section 8 housing and they call the police or something else happens, maybe the abuser isn't supposed to live there and he's coming and living there and they end up losing their housing because of that. People who are abusive are very manipulative and do a lot of different types of behaviors and controlling aspects to keep the survivor with them. So I want to talk about some Arizona specific data. The continuum of cares across the country are required every year to do a point in time count of the homeless population. And the National Network to End Domestic Violence also does what's called the DV census. So it's a 1-day count. This is usually completed in September. In 2022, it was completed on September 7th. And in Arizona, we had 85% of our domestic violence specific programs reporting. Of those 85% of programs that reported, they served 1,485 survivors of domestic violence on that one given day. Now, about a little over 50% of those were served in some type of a housing, whether it was shelter, transitional, hotel, motel, but those were all served in temporary housing, which is not considered a permanent housing solution. And while a lot of those people were served in non-residential support services, I can tell you from experience that a lot of those people being served in non-residential support services are being served there because there was no shelter or other housing available for them. And that comment I just made is evidenced by the next statistic that says of the 285 unmet requests for services, 82% of those were specifically for somewhere safe to go, shelter, motel, transitional housing, other type of housing. So we know that this is an issue in Arizona and that there is that intersectionality of survivors experiencing homelessness, either on, a longer term scale because they can't find anywhere to go, or shorter term scale when they're in shelter for, up to 4 months. The other thing is, we want to understand survivors. It's important that people understand the survivors' experience of trauma. Audre Lorde, an amazing advocate and poet and author, said there's no such thing as single issue struggle because we do not lead single issue lives. And this is true for survivors as well. Their experiences of trauma are rooted in that chronic, persistent interpersonal violence that can overwhelm somebody's ability to cope and manage those daily activities. It can be challenging. Trauma does a lot to the brain, and it does a lot to a person's ability to make good choices and decisions for themselves. Not that they can't, they certainly can, but when you're constantly in that fight, flight, or freeze mode, that can interfere with that ability to make those choices and to handle those ongoing stressors. A New Leaf also operates some rapid rehousing programs. We have some that are for the general population, and then we have some that are specific to domestic violence survivors. And in the programs that are for the domestic violence specific survivors, we see that we need to provide additional case management, and the subsidy usually takes a little bit longer for them to get stabilized than it does for the people in the general population. And I'm not saying that people in the general population haven't experienced trauma. We've all experienced trauma at some point in our lives. Certainly people who are unsheltered experience trauma as well. I just wanted to reflect that interpersonal trauma can be very chronic and very persistent, and that can take a little bit longer for people to overcome. They may go to shelter and spend 4 months in shelter and then go into housing. 4 months isn't long enough for them to overcome that crisis that they've been in for many years and overcome those impacts of trauma. The Safe Housing Partnership, which is a collaboration of DV and mainstream resources across the country, have gotten together, and they talk about, integrating domestic violence and coordinated entry work. And they talk about intimate traumas in particular can be extremely hard to disclose to a complete stranger. even when help is on the line. When assessment tools and processes are not trauma-informed, the likelihood of disclosure shrinks considerably. That's been another challenge that survivors have talked about in response to going into court and entry and not having somebody that's trauma-informed or an assessment that's trauma-informed, and they're just not feeling comfortable, sharing information to get the resources that they might need. So what are we doing in court and entry? I've been on the court and entry committee for more years than I probably care to admit. I think it's been at least 7 years. And I'm very excited about the work we are currently doing because the court and entry leads have really committed to creating a streamlined process as survivors come in through the court and entry sites. So what we did is we created a separate work group, the DV court and entry work group, and we're specifically addressing this issue. One of the things we're working on right now is in order for us to get a good idea of the inflow of survivors coming into court and entry, we want to get data from the shelters, from the domestic violence shelters who are making those referrals so that we can create a prioritization overlay for survivors. In Maricopa County, the current prioritization criteria is chronicity, length of time homeless, and I can't believe I forgot the third one. I used to know this like that. There's a third one. I don't remember off the top. Oh, the VI-SPDAT score. Sorry, VI-SPDAT score. And we know that most survivors are not going to meet that chronicity definition. And so if that were the case, they would never get prioritized for housing. And so we want to make sure that there is a specific overlay for survivors. So we're working with the shelters to provide data on who they are referring to the court and entry sites so that we can get that solid information. Once we get it from the shelters, we're going to roll it out to DV community-based providers as well. There's a large network of community-based providers that also work with survivors who maybe aren't able to get into shelter. And so we want to roll that out and have better information because we know, again, 1,485 survivors across the state of Arizona in one day. And just over 50% of them were even housed safely or in a shelter. So we know there's a lot that need to be sheltered and need to find housing. So we're looking to add, we're looking to add also some trauma-informed survivor-focused questions on the court entry assessment. I think that is another key piece to this in ensuring that the language that people in the court entry process is using is trauma-informed and that those questions are trauma-informed as well, specifically for survivors. When you're asking questions about their domestic violence, we want to make sure that they understand that we're gathering this information only to help them access those services more appropriate to them. As I said, there are DV specific rapid rehousing programs available, not only through a New Leaf, but also through Chicanos por la Causa. And we want to make sure we can get them streamlined into that service if there's any openings. And if not, then use that prioritization overlay for the general resources available. And finally, just in conclusion, domestic violence in all of its forms is a pervasive problem in our society. It impacts families, it impacts individuals. It is a public safety and a public health issue, and it requires community support to ensure that we can adequately assist survivors as they work on living a life free from violence. We can only accomplish this when we recognize the impact of homelessness on all the members of our community and work to ensure that individuals and families have access to safe and affordable housing. That ends my presentation. If anyone has any questions, I would be more than happy to answer any questions as best I can.
Thank you, Dana. And I understand also we have Daniela Munoz Alvarez here. I'm sorry, Daniela, I meant to include you in the initial introduction. Would you prefer to speak now and then questions, or give it another minute to see if there are any other questions for Dana?
Christina, is that question for myself or
Yes.
for Dina? Oh, okay. I don't mind the order. I'm here to introduce Kyle, who is going to share a little bit about
her experience regarding the intersections of domestic violence and how that impacted her housing. Dana, the only thing I wanted to say is how exciting to hear that you're working on this with coordinated entry specific to DV survivors. I know that in Pima County, which is the county I reside in, Emerge, the organization I worked for when we were doing the same for coordinated entry here, we worked together, CE and Emerge, to be able to come up with those questions. It included some lethality assessment questions that were appropriate. I would definitely encourage you, if you all are in the process of figuring that out, to reach out to see if Emerge can share their lessons learned and just that overall process.
Thank you, Daniela. Yeah, I know Ed pretty well, so.
Great, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, so I'll reach
Awesome.
out to him if we want
Excellent.
to have some more input on that. Thank you.
Well, Daniela, it sounds like what Kyle's contribution may also inform questions that Dana and the three of you can all pile on to. So, Dana, if you're okay, Daniela, please introduce Kyle and we'll keep moving.
Absolutely. My name is Daniela Munoz Alvarez. I work for the Arizona Coalition to End Sexual Violence and Domestic Abuse. I'm here in support and solidarity with Kyle, who, like I explained, will share a little bit about how domestic violence disrupted the stability of her housing and ongoing impacts that she's experiencing. What I wanted to share before passing the mic over to Kyle is Kyle, among other survivors, are a part of a program here at the Coalition called the Speakers Bureau. The Speakers Bureau is a platform that is for survivors, by survivors, and to give them the ability to shape their narrative and explain to the community, the various communities that they belong to, how domestic violence goes about impacting the community level. A lot of times the misunderstanding is that domestic violence is a single or a relationship issue, but we all know here that it's a community issue. And so this program really works to be able to work with survivors to get their voices centered as we do all of our work in each of our corners. And so with all that being said, Kyle, by all means, the mic is yours.
Thank you very much, Daniela, and thank you all for having me here. It's really important to me because I am a survivor of domestic abuse, domestic violence, and in going all that I've gone through, I want to make sure that my purpose is so that no other woman has to go through what I've been through, not only from domestic abuse, but also being in a chronic state of homelessness. So I want to thank you all for having me here. My name is Kyle. I'm 54 years old, and a little bit of background on how I wound up here in Arizona is that I'm originally from the East Coast. I am currently going through a divorce that's been going over just about 3.5 years now. I fled my abuser 7 years ago. I had the help of a therapist that got me out of state and into a trauma hospital. And I left with 2 suitcases and nothing else. And I was in a trauma hospital for 8 weeks before my team could find me proper care here in Arizona, where I at least knew some people. So I arrived in Arizona in September of 2017, and I immediately went into hiding from my abuser. As a result of leaving him, I was punished financially. So my abuser only would put in enough money into our accounts that he deemed was a necessity for me to live off of. And sometimes that was only $100 or $200 a month. So I had lived off my credit cards for years until I had maxed them out. And it had gotten to a point where that's when my husband filed charges against me, when he knew that I was in a state where I had no money. And if I had no money, I could not make rent. And therefore, I was going to be out on the streets. I had begged him not to let that happen to us. I have a little dog, by the way. And and I was terrified because I didn't know where I was going to end up. And so he obviously didn't care about that. At that point, I was a participant in the Arizona Coalition for Sexual and Domestic Violence for a few years. I'd been in the Speakers Bureau, their share committee, and I was going to support groups with them. And so I was lucky enough to have the support of the coalition on my side as I transitioned into becoming homeless. I can tell you the first shelter that I was in was absolutely terrifying. I don't want to give the name of it, but my dog and I were threatened nearly every single day. It was unsafe. There was drugs going on all around me. It was unfit to even stay in. The room that I was in consisted of 2 bunk beds, and it was myself and another woman in it. And my personal space became what my bed was, with blankets around the bottom of it. That was the amount of privacy that I had. I was also in a room where the facilities weren't able to be used because the sewer pipe had been broken and had leaked in our room, and there was nowhere else to put myself, my roommate, or my dog. I had to give my dog up, who is my emotional support animal, because I was afraid he was going to be hurt there. During my time at that shelter, there was a housing specialist, but I received no help. The majority of the women there were with families, small children. And so it appeared like they were prioritized, and I felt completely invisible. I was sent down to Cass to apply for rapid rehousing. I was assaulted down there pretty badly, in which even security had witnessed it and nobody did anything about it. I applied for rapid rehousing only to have my information lost in the system, and told me that I would have to go back down and reapply. Prior to that, I was told I would check in every 2 or 3 months. And I was always told that that was too early for me to check in. So by the time I was already 2 years into this, I was told that my information had been lost. I was, after my, I believe it was 3 months in that first shelter, there was nowhere for me to go. And the housing specialist had informed me the best she could do was to have me call other shelters and see if other emergency shelters would take me. Otherwise, my only option was to be on the streets. And that really scared the hell out of me. But by the grace of God, there was an organization that I had kept in touch with as used as an outreach program while I was going through this. And after telling my case manager what I had experienced, she was able to get me into her program. And I'm very proud to say that I am a participant in the Doves program. We are one of the only kind of its type of shelter that caters for the needs of older women having to start over with completely nothing. And it's a really devastating place to be in. So I am currently going through a divorce right now. I have no money. I have no more legal representation. I am also in the state's ACP program, which I am so thankful for, but my divorce is going through another state on the East Coast, and I'm not afforded that protection of not having to see my abuser or even have him hear my voice. So a little bit about what this homelessness has done to me. I have been in the Doves program for 2 years at their main location, and my time was up. And during that time, my abuser was able to drag out in the court system, run up legal fees for me, waste my time with trying to find housing. And I had reached my limit at that point of Doves. And I fall within a category where I don't qualify for HUD housing. I was collecting SSI at the time. I'm permanently disabled, but I could not receive that any longer because I was receiving, I was and I am receiving a very nominal amount of spousal support granted through the state of where I am. That state happens to have an archaic law that says I am prohibited from collecting any type of alimony if I am cohabitating with another person. So that leaves me with only being in shelters or in the hospital. I cannot stay with a friend. It's not an option. So I just wanted to put that context out for understanding of why can't I, catch a couch on a girlfriend's, in a girlfriend's home. But I want to get back to how this, oftentimes I have been told, I'm also SMI, and I've been told along my journey, and even when I do a public speaking to dispel the myths of what domestic violence or homelessness or mental illness looks like, I'm always met with, well, you look like you're okay. And I tell people that sometimes a part of surviving is trying to appear as if I'm okay. I like to say a lot of times that sometimes survivors and homeless folks, they hide behind a smile because the degree of shame that comes along with it and what it does to you as a person is it strips your dignity away. And it has re-traumatized me in a way that in my trauma-informed sessions that I have twice a week with my therapist in my support groups, that I can only focus on what I am going through situationally instead of my main cores of trauma, is because I need to be able to function daily. Being homeless has left me, it's increased my severe PTSD. It's made me depressed. I was hospitalized for 5 months out of last year and sent to 3 different trauma treatment centers, only to have to return to a shelter. That's happened to me twice, being in a trauma recovery center, or whether it be a behavioral health hospital here in Arizona. I'm always left to return to the shelter, which is a traumatizing experience for me. So it creates this horrible feeling of instability. I feel the clock ticking every single day while my abuser is able to control the system, control the money that seeps down to me. And I am not given enough to get me out of being homeless. As I said, I don't qualify for HUD housing and I don't have a family. And my information was lost in rapid rehousing. And what I am depending on right now is that my divorce will be over in time before I have nowhere else to go. And I somehow will be able to get enough money to get me out of a shelter. Because we all know that the biggest crisis that's facing us right now is the lack of permanent housing. It just does not exist at all. It does not exist. And that is a devastating spot to be in, because you hear it spoken about a lot in the news and things that are covered like that. And I've even read articles where you have new developers coming in and they're developing these communities for the middle class that find it difficult to get by. But I don't hear of any housing initiatives going up where it addresses the needs of homeless folks that need that permanent housing, that are coming out of transitional housing. I don't feel it exists. It doesn't feel like it exists in my demographic. So I feel that for survivors of domestic violence, the core thing that we need is to feel safe. I personally don't feel safe anywhere, 100% safe. Fortunately, the organization that I'm in right now, they provide safety for me. But the fear that I'm always in because of my abuser and him finding me and harassing me is, it's completely overwhelming. And I've been living this way ever since I left him, which was 7 years ago, and he still won't leave me alone. So safety is paramount. And I'm not sure of the accurate information that I've been told as far as how many transitional housing units we have for women that are facing domestic violence and trying to restart over. I personally know from my other friends experiencing it that I know of 3 within Maricopa. I don't know if that's accurate enough, but I can tell you, I know very many women that were in the situation that I am that are not blessed because they cannot get into emergency housing. They cannot get into transitional housing like I've been blessed with. And they are out there on the street, living in fear because there is no other place to go. And I feel that as a community, we should be doing more to help these people. I would love nothing more than to be on camera and show my face and give a face to what all of this looks like. Because it's not just the people that you see on the corner with a sign. And it's not just the people that have mental health issues that get their services through a clinic. Sometimes it's a woman in her Escalade in the Walmart parking lot with her 4 kids because she has nowhere else to go. That's what homelessness can look like for our demographic. And I am trying to put my life together the best that I can with what I have. I collect a very small amount. It's not enough for me to even get a room somewhere. And I collect $23 of food stamps. And I utilize food pantries in order to help get me by. Oftentimes somebody might say, oh, well, why don't you get a job? In fact, that was just something that I experienced this morning. I was told that I was lazy and that why don't I just get out there and get a job? And it's not that simple when I have a hidden disability. I have seizures. I have a brain cyst. I find it very hard to function. And so it's not so easy to just go out there and get a job. So I'm not sure of my time limit right now. I apologize if I've been all across the board. There's always so much that I want to say when I speak on these panels, and I go off in all different kinds of directions, but I feel like I have to make purpose of what I go through, and everything has been taken away from me except for my voice. And so if the best that I can do is make my voice now, be heard now, and be able to make an impact on one person, then I can sleep at night knowing that I did the best that I could do today. But with for safety reasons, I cannot show my face. I've already been threatened with defamation lawsuits. So my voice is all that I do have. And I want to thank you all for listening very intently for what I can see. The nodding of understanding, I do appreciate that. That tells me that we have some great trauma-informed folks in here. And thank you very much for giving me this platform to be able to share my experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you very much. And thank you, Daniela, for bringing Kyle to us.
Yeah.
Did you have something you wanted to add to that? Or
All that to say is we definitely appreciate the opportunity to center voices like Kyle here in these spaces. I think oftentimes we work so hard and might fall into the day-to-days and forget who our Kyles are in our community, right? And so I definitely appreciate everything that she outlined and represented. And I think the call to action was to recognize that the basic human right is safety. And oftentimes that's encompassed through housing. And the call to action that I heard Kyle say is that we need more. And so I appreciate everybody's work on the day-to-day to be able to create that for her.
Thank you. Very well said, both of you. And a reminder that the Regional Domestic Violence Council has chosen to highlight individuals fleeing domestic violence who become homeless during October's Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so we all can help amplify Kyle's message through the way we implement our Domestic Violence Awareness Month programs. Are there any questions or comments for Dana, Daniela, or Kyle? Melanie?
Can you just clarify me? She mentioned that she does not qualify under HUD's definition for housing but I thought with the definition that you gave, she would qualify under the HUD 4 definition.
So there's a difference between meeting the definition of category 4 and meeting the qualifications for the subsidies. So she does meet the qualification as fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, but whatever housing subsidy, rapid rehousing subsidy, I'm not sure what subsidy she's not qualifying for. And Kyle, maybe you can speak more to that.
Yes, well, the place that I am in right now caters towards senior citizens. And so the bulk of the work that they do is trying to find housing for senior citizens. And so when I spoke with Rapid Rehousing back when, I was told that because I don't have children and that I'm not of age, that I probably wouldn't be able to receive any kind of help anytime soon. And I do know that with my fellow residents, that the wait lists to get into places are conditioned on a wait list just to get on a wait list. And one of the biggest problems that I'm also hearing is that there are so many places that are now requiring 3 times the income of what it costs to rent there. And when you're on a fixed income, it's impossible. It's impossible almost to meet that twice the amount of what the rent would be. And so now with many places making it you have to have 3 times the amount is just, it keeps people out. I did want to also mention that my credit has been completely destroyed because of my abuser. I'm over $100,000 in debt, and I don't know how I'm ever going to get out of that. I don't see any solutions to anything good anytime soon. So that is the information that was shared to me. Places that I have applied for through the place where I am now, I never meet their qualifications. So it's been lots of turn downs, so to speak.
Mary Lynn, did you, and then Susan?
Kyle is right. The most of the housing for younger people, less than 62, is for people with children. But you have to be 62 to get into senior housing, which is a little bit easier, like 1 to 2 years. But Kyle, I think, said earlier she was 54. So, it's like a good 8 years before she would qualify for senior subsidized housing.
And I just wanted to kind of explain a little bit about what Kyle is talking about. When she mentioned going down to the court entry site at Cass, there's over 4,000 people on the by name list waiting to be housed or matched with housing. And currently, if I remember correctly, that they're taking people that have been homeless 3 years more or longer. So again, survivors who haven't been homeless for 3 years aren't even going to get qualified. That's why we're trying to create an overlay for that prioritization, so that if we know that 1 in every 5 people going into the court of entry system is a DV survivor, and we can create the data to show that, the overlay would be something like 1 in 5 referrals for housing would be a DV survivor, regardless of their chronicity, regardless of their homeless status. So, or how long they've been homeless. So that's what that overlay means. And that's the work we're trying to do right now.
Susan?
Oh, I'm struggling to find the words. For Dana, for Daniela, for Kyle, this is an audience of human service professionals. We have spent our lives caring about people, working through systems, advocating, trying to address and improve systems of care. And so it's particularly painful for me to know that anybody falls through the cracks or anybody's left behind. And all I can keep thinking of is how articulate and how controlled and how intentional, Kyle, your comments are and your thoughts. And I know that we have a lot of residents, a lot of people that we work with who aren't able to share and communicate that way. I know that, at the end of the day, we all have our moments where we fall apart. I'm sure that some of us have more moments than others, but it worries me that with someone of your ability to communicate and navigate, we're still not being able to meet your needs. I want to say I'm sorry that the system isn't able to meet your needs. I want to say I'm sorry for the experiences you've had. Nobody deserves that. And I just, and my social instincts want me to immediately jump in and just start to navigate and case management and create all of these opportunities. I don't know, and I know that wasn't the purpose of your sharing your story with us. I know that you're not intending to walk away from this conversation and say, okay, now I've got an angle on housing or an angle on job or an angle on benefits. But you do have the right people that you're talking to right now. Every one of us oversees programs that are specifically designed to work with individuals in your circumstances, and or we have very strong connections. City of Phoenix is a large organization, so I don't directly oversee our victim services division, but I have very strong relationships with those individuals. So I'll wrap it up here. One, I just want to tell you how honored I am to have spent time with you today, with all three of you today, to hear this information, to continue to be reminded of why we're here and what our purpose is. I do want to encourage you, if you're at a place where you do want to talk to somebody about maybe assistance and services and support and maybe some coordination, I want one of us, all of us, to be able to rally around you for that. But I guess I just want to leave it with thank you for taking the time, taking the risk, sharing that pain with us. I just think that it's been a very profound 30 minutes, and you didn't go too long, and you weren't all over the place. You were exactly telling your story the way that it needed to be told. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your kind words and being heard. It's really nice to be heard. And like I said, this has become my purpose, to help educate people on the different sectors of what homelessness looks like. And I often think that the older population and survivors kind of get left behind. Individual survivors get left behind. So once again, thank you so much for your comments. I truly appreciate that.
Thank you, Kyle. And thank you, Susan. Okay. Well, if there are no other comments on this topic, I think we have some stuff to think about in terms of our own programs and where there might be gaps that we can fill that we have new awareness of. And we've got, like Susan said, some great policy people here who are the right people to be trying to get that ball rolling. So you came to a good spot. Thank you again, everyone. And I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next agenda item. That is Matthew Dudley. He's the transit manager with the City of Avondale, and he's going to be providing a presentation regarding the work on increasing access to transportation in the West Valley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And also I'd like to thank Seth. I believe he brought this out with Kristen Taylor from the City of Surprise could not be here today. So I told her I would definitely kind of fill in the spot for her just to kind of talk about, you know, what we're doing, some exciting things out here in the West Valley. So once again, my name is Matthew Dudley. I am the transit manager for the City of Avondale, but I also, you know, through this program that we have, I have Kristen Taylor. She's the business services administrator with the City of Surprise, and also the wonderful Christine McMurdy from the City of Goodyear, who's also the project management coordinator on her side. So let me talk, you know, next slide, please. Let me talk about our microtransit system. So microtransit is kind of our new and innovative form of transportation that serves Avondale, Goodyear, and now recently with great success in the City of Surprise. It focuses really kind of on providing our flexible and personalized rides to people within our communities. Unlike traditional buses with fixed routes and schedules, our microtransit system, which we call WeRide, really kind of adapts to the needs of our residents. It uses technology like smartphone apps, very much like an Uber and a Lyft, to connect passengers with our small vehicles. And in this case, as you can see on that one, it's kind of like a minivan, and it picks them up and drops them off at their desired virtual stop locations. And I'll talk in a few slides kind of about our virtual stop network that we have in all three communities. Now, WeRide is really particularly beneficial for human services groups, as it really can kind of provide transportation accessibility for those who have limited mobility options. It offers our on-demand rides that can be tailored to any group's really specific needs, making it really easier for our individuals to get to important destinations like medical appointments, community centers, or we've even used for job interviews within our communities. Our microtransit system really kind of optimizes routes in real time. I mean, we take advantage of the technology that is out there to really kind of efficiently serve multiple passengers heading in a similar direction, which really kind of helps promote cost effectiveness. And it's kind of environmentally friendly using our non-diesel vehicles. Unlike what you'll see with our with our buses, we have the Zoom Circulator here in Avondale, and that is a diesel bus. But microtransit can also enhance community connections by offering especially shared rides, reduces the traffic congestion, which really kind of helps at the end of the day to contribute to a cleaner environment. So let's move to the next slide and talk about, you know, how does this work? How do you book a WeRide microtransit ride through our, as you can see, our individualized kind of app, which is provided by RIDECO. But it really is pretty much a straightforward process that offers a lot of convenience and flexibility to our residents. And really kind of here's the stages of kind of how it works. You really just start by downloading the app, and you can download the app. It's absolutely free. You just go to your smartphone's app store. So either the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store, and put in like WeRide Micro when you can find it. You go and create an account. You launch the app. You'll create a user account. It's very easy to do. You provide very, very basic information like contact details, and you can put in some payment information if you want to pay, in the app or in the vehicle. You enter your destination using a very easy to use app interface. You just put in your desired destination. You can text input like, hey, I'm going to the Avondale Resource Center. You can look on the map to see where you're at kind of located. You can look at the virtual map network and kind of choose your locations. Then you'll specify your pickup time. So you'll have the option to choose your preferred pickup time. You know, depending on the service, you might be able to kind of request the ride for immediate pickup, or you can schedule it for a later time. In our case, in all 3 communities, you can kind of book out 6 days in advance. Then you'll kind of review your fare. The app provides you with a fare really based predominantly on the passenger type that you select. For our WeRide services in all 3 communities, that means either general passengers pay $2 a trip, which is extremely cheap, or if you have seniors, veterans, and students from 5 to 18, and they will only pay $1. Then you'll just go and you'll confirm the booking. Once you have all the details, it'll show you the estimated arrival time of your vehicle. And given that we use RideCo, they give you kind of options like, hey, you know, do you want to be picked up now? Do you want to be picked up a little later? Maybe you want to get to your destination kind of at a later time. So it gives you that flexibility to kind of decide kind of where you want to go. And then when you're next in line, you can track that vehicle in real-time tracking, very, very much like an Uber and a Lyft, which allows you to see the location of the approaching vehicle on the map. So again, it's 110 degrees outside. So if your house and your virtual stop is, you know, right around the corner, we tell people, make sure you get to the stop maybe about 5 minutes before, but they have that ability when they see their vehicle tracking through their community to say, hey, you know, that vehicle is going to be here maybe in a few minutes. And I know it only takes, you know, a minute or 2 to walk to my community mailbox. Then kind of go out there to your community mailbox or wherever their virtual stop is located and just walk and meet without having to kind of wait what you would see on a traditional bus and going, oh, hey, the schedule says it's, you know, 3:00 p.m. Will that bus be there? I guess I'll have to go there and wait. You can actually track and see the vehicle. And then once your vehicle is there, it's very easy. The vehicle arrives, you board it, you let your driver know your name, or the driver will usually kind of ask you by name, and they will also open and close the door for you. Payment is honestly really, really simple and really convenient, and it's handled through the app, which you provide when setting up your account. So you'll be charged immediately once you book your ride. However, there's a lot that are unbanked, and so we wanted to make it easy for our residents who are unbanked, so you can pay with cash directly to the operator when you get on board. Then you just really kind of sit back and enjoy the ride to your destination. Once you get to your destination, you'll have the opportunity to rate your experience and leave feedback for the driver, but more importantly for the service, because we'll, you know, each city, so Surprise, Goodyear, and Avondale, will get this information in real time. So we can really kind of tailor the needs and the experiences for our residents to say, hey, you know, we're seeing, you know, this particular feedback regarding, you know, I need earlier morning service or later evening service or maybe weekend service. So all that information comes to us almost in real time that we can do to help us kind of make our decision-making process. And then last, you kind of just get your receipt and your ride history. So that way you have a digital receipt for your records, or if you're paying by cash, we'll go over and just kind of, you know, fill out a receipt and give it to you. But overall, booking a microtransit ride through our WeRide app, it really offers a pretty user-friendly and convenient way to request some personalized transportation services to a resident's needs. Next, please. This is some service specifics. So the wait time, again, we have 3 communities. Each are about 12 to 13 kind of square miles, and we're seeing some just a fantastic wait time. So by the time you're booking your service to the time you're getting picked up is really averaging only 15 minutes or less, which is really a fantastic number. We were kind of shooting for 20 minutes or less, and you know, in some communities they're picking you up in within 10 minutes. The fare, so there's a promo period. So right now, Surprise is doing free rides until the end of August, but in the Avondale and the Goodyear zone, we offer our fares at $2, and again $1 for our seniors, veterans, students, and disabled riders. And we've seen just fantastic adoption from here in Avondale of our Australian Mountain Community College students. They absolutely love the service. So school starts, I think, for them next Monday. So I can already see some pre-bookings from them ready to take WeRide to school. And again, it's open to anybody. I mean, yes, you're a resident, but even if you're not a resident, if you're a resident of the city of Phoenix and you happen to, come into the Goodyear or the Surprise or the Avondale area and you want to take a trip to a particular area, we don't check for, residency. We'll say, hey, absolutely, as long as you're booking the trip and you're kind of filling things out, you're good to go. You can book on the app or on the phone. I know my mother is not a big fan of smartphone applications. So we do have a dispatch center open here in Avondale, which serves all 3 communities. So if you feel like you don't want to book through the app, you can easily call into our booking number and book that way. And currently, during our pilot program, the services go from traditionally 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., except City of Surprise just added some early morning service for their express riders. So now they start at 6 a.m. in the morning. Next slide, please. So here are, the 3 pillars of microtransit. I like to call it coverage and convenience and cost. So again, we, as working for municipalities, we only have so much funding that kind of goes around. So we have to kind of balance out everything. And, if you focus on any one pillar, it comes with trade-offs. I like to call in, the other pillar. Hey, you want cost or you want coverage, you want convenience. Well, your cost is going to go up. So you have to try to find that, fine line of balance of what you're trying to do. So, the objectives and constraints we have for our micro transit project, depending on what KPIs we're setting forth, really will kind of dictate our focus areas. So as you're looking at coverage, you have to look at, a multitude of things. What's going to be your geographic span? How big do you want, your micro transit service to cover in your community? What are going to be your hours of operation? You start adding, later hours in the day. Again, that's additional service that needs to be out there. What type of demographics do you just want to serve? Like for us, we're serving the general public and pretty much everybody, but there's other microtransit companies and agencies out there that maybe only provide it for seniors or for first last mile type of coverage. What kind of convenience do you want? For us, we provide, our walking distance. Again, we live in Arizona in the Phoenix area. It is hot. So we want to make sure that our virtual stop network works really convenient for our residents. So at first I was, when we were setting this up, I was like, I went no more than a 5-minute walk. Come to find out, people are only really walking about 250 feet to the virtual stop. And sometimes people will still say, hey, that's too far, Matt. But, we're looking at reliability of our service, how long, how many vehicles are we going to put out with our wait times and onboard times. And then, the last one is our cost. So you put out more vehicles, it's going to cost your municipality a little more. What's your cost per ride? Some microtransits will go for $5 per ride. Some, for us will go into $1 and some will even be free. So really, there's a lot of information, a lot of stuff that kind of dictates. So you have these knobs and these levers that you have to really kind of look at as you're developing and operating your system, especially during this pilot period, to figure out kind of like, what is that hot spot for everybody? All right, next slide, please. So let's talk. I know I was talking about, our WeRide virtual stop network in all 3 of our communities. And it really is kind of a dynamic and flexible approach to really kind of establishing our pickup and our drop off points for all of our residents. Unlike what you'll see in a traditional fixed bus stop that you'll see, operated by Valley Metro, virtual stops really are not physical locations, but rather digital points that are determined based on kind of our real-time demand and optimizing what we call the algorithm with RICO. But our virtual stop network in pretty much all 3 communities is predominantly focused around community mailboxes, especially in our master plan communities and at the wheelchair accessible spots in a lot of our businesses. But we do have, in some of the like Old Town Surprise, there's areas in Goodyear and in Avondale that aren't master plan communities. So we have to find kind of another way to do it. So we'll go out there and look at our street corners and say, hey, you know what? This street corner looks like it could be a good location for our minivan to kind of pick up a resident. And again, we try to not to locate it, more than a few minute walk from your house. Originally thought, that would be less than, 1,000 feet. But again, it's a really, really close. And, We'll get data constantly from our provider RideCo, so much data that I don't even know what to do with it sometimes. So we have a lot of data to really kind of determine, what's working for our community. But at the end of the day, the beauty of these virtual stops is that you can add or remove a lot of these stops based on the demand and the input from your residents. And I can sometimes do this in less than a day. There was, when I first started there in the Avondale zone, which would be there kind of that 17.5 square miles there on the left, there was some locations over near the Avondale Civic Center. And, there were some residents say, hey, Matt, could you put a virtual stop over near the CVS pharmacy so I don't have to walk across Avondale Boulevard? And, I was getting a couple of those suggestions that were coming in almost in real time. And I was like, absolutely. Looked at it, found the Latin Long, exactly where it went to Google Maps, actually, found the Latin Long, called RideCo up in Canada, and they said, you know what, give us the Latin Long, give us some information. And that stop was put in there that day. So it really, really is easy to do. And you'll see all these virtual stops. There's several hundred per community. I think Surprise absolutely has the most. But what I'll try to do, and it was fantastic. So with our partnerships from multiple, municipalities, the city of Goodyear took the charge and created our standalone website, which is WeRideAZ.com. So I would ask, especially if you want to know more about that information, is look at the WeRide site, and you can go to each one of our communities and see exactly where your virtual stop is located in your neighborhood. So when you're going in and picking your ride and trying to look at different destinations, you can kind of zoom in and say, okay, I know the virtual stop's located over here next to the Walmart, or maybe it's located in the community mailbox 2 streets over. So it's really, really easy to find. And we created that website because, we work for government. So I know sometimes if you're trying to find some information in a department, it can be really difficult to find. You have to go from page to page to page. So while each one of our cities has information regarding WeRide on their website, we direct our residents, especially if they want some information about WeRide, to go to WeRideAZ.com. Next, please. This is our key performance indicator. So I'll have to, shout out. Why Surprise says it's only 5,324. Oh my goodness. They have only been in operation since April, and it seems like they're smashing records on a daily basis. I think yesterday they had, another outstanding day, and the system in general, I think, had over about 350 riders yesterday in all 3 zones. But there's been a lot of adoption. It seems like we're hitting, just absolutely record numbers each and every kind of week. And we have some fantastic percent drop off and pickup time, which is pretty much on-time performance, which is really difficult. I know the services that we provide, we have a circulator here, kind of mentioned, called the Zoom. That on-time performance is probably about 68 to 70% versus our on-demand service, which is, up there in the upper 90s. Shared rides are very, very important. Actually, that's one of the things I would like to, as you're looking for, a ride share service in your community, that's one of the things that, it really wasn't challenging, but is trying to let people understand that this is a shared ride service. So unlike an Uber and a Lyft, where you'll get that individualized service, but you're paying a premium. I used one to go to Fry's, a couple months ago, and I was paying $15 just to go, less than 2 miles. On WeRide, it's, $2 or $1, but you may be picking up another resident, maybe in your neighborhood, who is also going to Fry's. So it is a shared ride service, and we're getting a lot of usage, which I think kind of takes, vehicles off the road if we're having kind of a larger, shared rides. Our average ride rating, again, this is on a 5.0 scale, is 4.9. The community just absolutely loves that. And then again, at the end of each one of your trip, you can kind of go in there, you can rate it just like an Uber and a Lyft, and you can provide as many comments and feedbacks to the cities regarding, about that particular trip. A lot of the top destinations you'll see over here is exactly what you would expect to see kind of in a microtransit system. A lot of people are going to, the city halls, The resource centers, absolutely a Walmart. I would say if you are starting your own microtransit system, make sure you have that Walmart in there because everybody wants to go to that Walmart. The resource centers, Estrella Mountain Community College, again, I used to have Zoom serve Estrella Mountain Community College, and it got very, very low ridership to the point where before I was starting the system, I went up there and said, hey, you know what, I'm starting this microtransit system. This is what it is. But I also have the Zoom. I was a college student once at ASU. I can continue bringing Zoom up here because I'm sure the college students would just absolutely love to use it. And they said, Matt, no way. Nobody uses that Zoom. So I took Zoom out there, Zoom from not connecting to Estrella Mountain Community College, and just made it pure on-demand microtransit. And boy, oh boy, I think it's about 30 to 40 students per day were using it, where I was having maybe a couple. Target, again, very popular. I don't have a Target in Avondale, but for some reason, Goodyear seems to hog all the Targets, and they have two. So I have Avondale residents that go over to the Target, but I also, you know, on the other side, we like to kind of share some of these destinations of where we're going. But again, pharmacies and supermarkets, and a lot of the passenger types you'll see, mostly general, but also our seniors and veterans and our students. All right, next page, please. Oof, marketing. So again, if you go to the common man, common woman on the streets in each one of these communities, say, hey, you know, we now have microtransit, and they'll be like, okay, thanks, strange guy. And it really is kind of like a new and unfamiliar services. So it takes time. It presents challenges and takes time to try to effectively market the WeRide system to pretty much an unfamiliar suburban community. So you have to have a lot of targeted communication, a lot of education, and you really need to showcase the value of the service and have lots and lots of patience. So this can honestly be accomplished in many, many ways. So our community outreach programs, our educational workshops that we have in certain areas. I'm going through, we're almost a year in the Avondale and Goodyear side. And what we're going to be doing is starting this upcoming Monday, we have hired a microtransit WeRide ambassador. So this ambassador, bilingual ambassador, is going to be going out into the community just to let residents know about the service. So we have a lot of information out there, a lot of swag. Some cities have more swag than others, but we'll go out there and get that information to our residents. We have a lot of promotional opportunities, personalized messages, our partnerships, a lot of demo and test rides. As I mentioned, right now with the service starting in Surprise, it's free for our residents to really kind of try, you know, fare free, just to see how the service works. So that way they can try it really without any risk. I try to, you know, have a good online presence. So we have that very user-friendly website. And we're looking at kind of creating our own little social media profile for WeRide for all three cities. Just to do that, we do a lot of targeted advertising. So I'll go and buy some sponsored ads on Facebook, Instagram, and Nextdoor to try to reach those specific demographics. And that's one of the big things our marketing department over here in Avondale tries to impress upon us, is making sure you know who's your community, who you're trying to find. So I just put out the new, you know, EMCC, welcome back to school. Kids use WeRide, and we started a summer promotion of summer because again, transit ridership usually kind of dips in the summer as everybody goes on vacation. So we ended up saying, hey, you know, kids, go to your, you know, fun stuff. And actually we lowered our fare during the summer. Door-to-door campaigns, and a lot of feedback and refinement from the information provided to us by our residents that come in with our online stuff. Again, we get that kind of every day. And a lot of community events. We'll go to different community events. Really kind of, once you bring that vehicle out there, we made that vehicle very, very loud. So that way you cannot miss a WeRide vehicle when you go down the street. And so that way, that's all I'm looking for. We did our survey. We got some survey results. And the number one thing, how'd you hear about WeRide? they'll say, you know what, I saw the We Ride vehicle going down there. So it has that phone number, it has that QR code. And we went and added only $1 or only $2. So residents were getting confused. Like we thought this was like a professional Uber Lyft type of thing. So therefore professional Uber Lyft type of cost. And we're like, no. I go, let's put some stickers on there that says only $2 so that the residents could be understand that cost is pretty cheap and it's for them. All right, next slide. Already finished. So at the end of the day, you know, we really do think, you know, in all three communities, and we're evaluating this now, and it's a pilot in all three cities. We really do think it's an effective transit option. You know, from the Avondale side, when we did this study a couple years ago, the study was actually, you know, asked by the city of Goodyear, say, hey, you know, can we look at, you know, different transit modes in the Southwest Valley as we're getting out of COVID? Unfortunately, you know, Zoom was actually a very good service for us both here in Avondale and Goodyear. But unfortunately, COVID really decimated the ridership to the point where in my North Zone where We Ride runs today, I was only getting 20 to 30 passengers per day. Now I'm up to, you know, 80 to 100 passengers per day. Surprise, which really kind of was a transit desert, not a whole lot of transit options. They are seeing just magnificent ridership, more than, you know, Avondale and Goodyear. And Surprise has only been operating since April. I think they got to 154 last week. So it really is making an impact to our residents. And what we're trying to do is continue to collect data and make improvements to all three of our programs. Again, I mentioned City of Surprise just added an hour into their service. Here in Avondale, we are going to discontinue our Zoom service here in the south section and pretty much go with citywide rewrites starting in October. And the same thing with the city of Goodyear. They're looking at valuations to see should they extend it maybe to the north, add some more service hours, or go to Astray in the south. So a lot of evaluation, and we have a lot of data. Before I'd say we weren't getting a whole lot of data from Valley Metro about our services, but going to a microtransit service, we have daily, weekly, monthly, annual type of reports that we get that can really come and show us exactly what information, what's helping us, how many people are booking, what time of day, who's booking in advance, who's booking on demand, a lot of information. So it really is a good service. And we're really kind of happy to roll it out in all three communities. When I created the RFP last year, I was like, you know what, no one else should go through, you know, the fun of creating, you know, this. So I made it in a way where it was a cooperative agreement. So that way any city, any municipality can kind of jump onto our service. And I federalized the RFP. So that way, if there's any federal opportunities in the future where we can go and maybe get some federal funding or some federal grants, we can add it that way. So that is the We Ride story in the Southwest Valley.
Thank you, Matt. You're a rock star, and we're so lucky to have you over here. Seth, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank Matt too. He is a rock star. In fact, I think I'm the one to blame to put this on the agenda, but Matt and Kristen on our team and the Goodyear team, they're really the experts. So Matt, kudos to you and for Goodyear and Avondale, your leadership to bring this to the West Valley. We in Surprise couldn't be happier with it. And it's going to, in a good way, cause a problem because we're going to have to figure out how to expand it and grow it because it's been so popular. And I'll just say, from a human services perspective, we're getting people to our resource center that we weren't able to get before. And also, I have a couple staff members that are using it every day. And so I truly believe it's an employment retention strategy. And so it's been super valuable. I know many of your cities already have transportation programs. This was very new to us. We don't have a lot of buses out here, only a commuter shuttle really. And so I think the targeted approach, the ride sharing, really brilliant. So Matt and Avondale team, Goodyear team, Christina, all the team that you guys have there, and our subject matter expert, Kristen. We sure appreciate it. So thank you.
For sure. Melanie?
And I don't know if I missed this. Thank you, Madam Chair. How did you guys fund the program? How are you funding it?
So Avondale is funded through a combination of local funds. And at one time, actually, it just ended this year. The Avondale Goodyear area was a urbanized zone under 200,000. That is no longer the case anymore. So we had the opportunity where we could fund half the cost with federal funds. And I know from the Goodyear side, they're using 50% federal funds and then 50% advertising revenue from their billboard from their park and ride.
And how much does it cost approximately to run?
I would say, for a zone, maybe running 3 or 4 vehicles, it's about $1 million a year, which equates to about, I would say about $90 per revenue hour. I like to kind of put that into perspective of the cost that I'm paying for the Zoom circulator service, which I'm paying right now $17 a revenue mile, runs about 10 miles and goes every hour. So that's about $170 per revenue hour. So again, microtransit is very much like an on-demand paratransit-like service. But you have that flexibility where you really didn't have that flexibility with a bus that goes, here's the schedule, it goes this way, and it only gets picked up a certain time. Here you have that flexibility where you can kind of go round and round anywhere you want.
And your agreement, though, is with it's a company that's running it. You said RideGo?
Yeah, RideGo, that is the
RideGo.
technology provider that we have. But the transportation provider who actually has that contract with RideGo is Transdev. So they operate, currently they operate the regional paratransit service, and it's just another office that they have kind of over here. And matter of fact, we're moving them to a new facility right down the street to flight into Goodyear. But fantastic group, and they're right next door to me right now in Avondale Public Works.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you making it a co-op agreement, because whether or not I'll have any luck on anyone's ear over here, but
yeah, absolutely.
At least that's helpful.
Yeah, feel free to reach out, and that's what we did for City of Surprise. I was talking actually to a few cities kind of around the region who have been interested in it. So I told them, absolutely, we're kind of an open book. We're learning, kind of as we go. When I came over here from the city of Goodyear or city of Glendale 2 years ago, one of the things is like, hey man, we want to implement a microtransit system. So I took a little bit of a road tour and took a little bit of vacation, went over to Southern California, looked at kind of suburban communities, because really microtransit is kind of an area, you wouldn't want to run this in like downtown Phoenix. Absolutely not. It's an expensive service. That those services that City of Phoenix provides, with light rail or some high density bus, that works well. You got to look at, microtransit as kind of like that connector, like, hey, you know what, let's throw out a connector. A bus is traditionally 40 feet long. I tell people we got to break out of that mode, thinking outside that 40-foot box of, oh, hey, let's throw a circulator out there. And then you're surprised that it doesn't work. So we have to try to think of maybe new and creative ideas and take advantage of, the technology and the systems that are working there. And I see these microtransit systems just popping up, a lot. So there's a lot of information, like, for instance, City of Chandler has a fantastic microtransit system that operated by VIA. Again, that is also a cooperative contract too. So there's a lot of stuff to do. City of Prescott Valley, I think Lake Havasu City is doing some, and let me see, I think maybe even our friends down in Tucson and up there in the city of Flagstaff. Just there's so many different flavors of microtransit that you can really kind of tailor it, to your need. I mean, we even tailor it to the need, in the 3-City We Ride Coalition here, just the different type of residents that take. My residents seem to really embrace the app, and about 80-90% of that are residents, booking on the app. Versus maybe, I think Surprise has a little more of the seniors, the residents that are calling into our system, but they're still really getting the great same experience. And we try to develop the number of key performance indicators for our cities, and trying to figure out what works best as we going forward, getting out of the pilot stage to see if we can kind of with something a little more permanent.
Yeah. A lot of cool data. Thank you.
Mhm.
We are coming up against the end of our meeting time. And I'm afraid we'll lose quorum. Kathy, are you okay with pushing? Are you going to be able to be at our October meeting? Because I'd really love to have you share about the financial empowerment and all of that stuff.
Yeah, sure, that's fine.
Okay, awesome.
I
So
apologize, Kathy, that did not happen today. I'm sorry. We really appreciate you being able to reschedule.
yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
And are there any more questions for Matt or comments? It really is fantastic. And I can imagine during spring training in Goodyear, a great, tourism kind of opportunity for us and economic development from that point of view too.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Cool. Well, thanks, Matt. And
welcome.
thanks, Seth, for making this suggestion. We are going to have Kathy speak next month. And so I think it's just a request for future agenda items right now. I would say if anyone has any, if they could just email them to Kelly and myself, I would appreciate that. And are there any comments from the committee? No? All right. Then I want to thank you all for being here, and I hope you have a great Friday tomorrow and an awesome weekend. And I'll see you next time. Our next meeting is October 12th at 2 o'clock.
Thank you all.